So there we go. We are broadcasting. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending Cartoon Crossroads Columbus 2020. My name is Jersey Drozd. I am the Interim Executive Director of CXC, and it is my pleasure to introduce a conversation with Tara Booth. CXC, you may have noticed that you did not get charged to be here. It was free to attend. And the reason why is because we are a 501(c) nonprofit, and we operate largely on the support of sponsors and donors like the Ohio Arts Council, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, White Castle, the Columbus Foundation, Able, Feasel. We thank them for their support. And also a lot of people work very hard together to make this festival what it is. And so I want to thank all of our partners, the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, Columbus College of Art and Design, the Columbus Metropolitan Library, the Wexner Center for the Arts, and of course, the Columbus Museum of Art, who is the sponsor for today's event. They made it possible for Tara to be here. Now, a little bit of housekeeping about Zoom webinars. For those of us who are participating by Zoom webinar, this is a presentation followed by Q&A. You have been automatically muted by the host, that's me, and your video is off. You are going to communicate with the panelists via text. I will show you how in just a moment. So, and I should say this presentation is being recorded and it is being simulcast to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and you can watch it live at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org. We have a little feed player embedded in there. So if anybody couldn't get in, you can tell your friends, hey, go to CXC, CXC's main page. You'll be able to watch it there. Now, how do you interact with the panelists? There is a chat button in the bottom of your screen. And if you click on that, it'll open up a chat feed where you can talk with the panelists and with each other. Everybody can see what's in the chat. You can ask questions there, but everybody will see your question. Now, if you want to ask a question, maybe a little bit more privately, there's a Q&A button. When you click that, this window pops up. And then you could type your questions in the bottom. And once you hit send, the panelists will see your question in the Q&A tab. The rest of the participants, attendees will not see this. You can also send your question anonymously if you want to, if you value your privacy. You don't want to be called out on the show. You just want the question addressed. So with that, I will close and I will hand it over to Jeff Sims.
Great. Thanks everybody for showing up today, and especially thank you to Tara Booth for being the Columbus Comics resident artist this year. This is the 9th year of the residency, which is exciting, and I'm really happy that Tara has joined the community of artists that have been part of this residency and gotten to know us a little bit and exhibited at the museum. And I just want to remind everyone that Tara's exhibition is up right now at Columbus Museum of Art, and the museum's open to the public, and you can get timed tickets, and we have some easy to follow rules in place to keep everybody safe and happy and comfortable. And Tara's exhibition is going to be up for quite a while. We extended it this year, so it's going to be up until next fall. So there's plenty of time to see it, but I'd say you can go today if you want. And I'll remind everyone that Sundays are free admission, and we're open late on Thursday evenings. And I hope that everyone gets a chance to go see it. We tried some fun stuff with the exhibition that I think turned out really well. Mm-hmm. So just, thanks and enjoy the conversation.
Thanks, Jeff. And honestly, thank you to you and to the Columbus Museum of Art and to your partners at CCAD for making this happen. This residency program, which was Jeff's brainchild, has been one of the best things that's happened in our comics community over the last 9 years. I can't believe it's been 9 years already. So I'm Jared Gardner. I am a professor at Ohio State University, where I mostly hang around with the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, and get to spend time with their amazing collection. And it is my great privilege to get to talk with Tara Booth today. Hi, Tara.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. This is so exciting for me. As I kind of mentioned to you earlier, when Jeff first proposed you for this year's resident, I immediately, and I'm sure everybody else in the group, immediately started envisioning the exhibition. Your work is so painterly. It is so, it's work you want to see on the walls and in a book simultaneously. So it was just a perfect fit. And I was also immediately excited because I hoped I might have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. So one of the, I'm going to actually do a quick share screen so we can, for people who don't know your work, because it's always part of the fun of these events, is that it's a combination of folks who are familiar with your work and want to hear from you, and folks who are just showing up to learn about somebody new that they can start to follow. And for me, your work has been especially important since the pandemic for me. I feel like this is your time, because it is work that deals with anxiety, with stress, with depression, with things that you've been wrestling with and sharing publicly for a long time, but which many people are perhaps experiencing in a serious way only in the last 7 months.
Yeah,
And you provide hope, right?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of funny because somebody from NPR had reached out to me about possibly like interviewing me and to talk about the pandemic, and because they thought that my work was really relevant. And I've been making work about anxiety and isolation, kind of like a phobia of leaving the house and that kind of stuff for so long. But it's funny because as soon as all this stuff started happening, I was like, actually, now that everybody's in the same boat, a lot of that anxiety is lessened for me because I don't feel so much like a freak for isolating. I'm like, everybody's doing it, and now I realize that it's difficult. I'm not alone. It's hard for everyone.
No, I felt that way too. I remember my first conversation with my therapist. She's like, "How you doing?" You know, because that anxiety that a therapist would have right after the pandemic. I was like, actually, I'm like, finally, the world gets it. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
We're all freaking out. This is perfect. No, but I mean, I've returned to your work not even just because of knowing you were going to be our resident, but just because your work is both incredibly honest about this stuff, but also really finds joy and beauty even in some really tough stuff. I mean, part of, for those of you guys, and this is some very early work I'm just kind of putting up on the screen. And early, I say, of course, your career is still very young. So Unwell came out in 2014, 2015?
2015, I think.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I mean, on one hand, it's kind of funny to say this is one of your first full-length works, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And yet it's not that long ago, but you've been so prolific and pushing yourself forward so much in terms of your work that it seems already.
It looks old. It looks vintage.
It looks vintage to you as you look at it. I mean, the style is, I mean, you're already there, fully formed in terms of thinking about, for example, how to represent kind of multiple instances of time within a single panel, within a single physical space. So some of that stuff was there from the start. I want to kind of start with that, because that to me is one of the most kind of exciting and unique aspects of your work. How did that arrive for you?
I think just because I went to school for painting, so I was making these really large paintings, and for some reason, the idea of making one image, like one static image, just didn't feel. There's something about like storytelling in image making that gives it like a little bit of validity to me, where it's like, okay, I'm telling you something that in my mind that gives a painting a point. Like the point of the painting is it's clear. There's a story here. So even when I was just doing bigger paintings, and I didn't really think about them as comics, almost out of insecurity, I felt like I had to jam pack action and narrative in order to make it feel complete and not just like it was static or something like that. So it started with making bigger paintings, and then I also just aesthetically, I was really drawn to like the Moy Bridge early photographs, the very early images of pre-video. So you have like a repetitive image of a running horse and all the images would be put together to make the video. So I just loved looking at a book of all of those kinds of images, and wanted to make something that read kind of in that way. And so kind of mashed that together with how I had been painting previously. And
did you take a lot of, did you get pushback when you were in school for bringing this much narrative to your work?
Felt like I did. I went to Tyler School of Art, and my teachers were kind of older, mostly male, and into either like hyper realistic, what's it called? Like figure painting. That was one direction I could have gone, or more like an abstract expressionist direction, where they were more interested in like almost like the meaning behind each brushstroke, or the feeling behind each brushstroke, more about the process of painting and less about narrative. And I don't know if it was just because I'm a really sensitive person, and they were trying to like teach me in this like tough love kind of way that I do not respond well to, but I just felt like I was receiving a lot of criticism, and that they were trying to kind of push me away from making illustrations and more into making, fine art, whatever that means.
Right. Yeah. And that distinction is still very important to a lot of more traditional art programs, unfortunately. But you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see in your early work, especially, the ways in which actually you took some of the best ideas for you from both approaches, right? There is a kind of interest in the figure, and there is an interest in paint as its own thing, and the brushstroke as something that has meaning.
Yeah. I think I talk a lot of shit about art school, but I have to remember that, if for nothing else, just the hours that I put into doing figure drawing and messing around with paint. Like I definitely learned a lot from going there. It was just, I think I took what they taught me and I put it into this other world where I felt more comfortable, which is in comics.
Did you already have a strong relationship to the idea of kind of graphic storytelling, or is that something that I know you bounced around a lot after school, Portland, Chicago.
Yeah, I did bounce around a lot. I think, growing up, I always kept a diary, and I always ended up drawing in the diary just because I kind of had like kind of obsessive memories. So even more than just writing about what had happened, I like to like draw it so that I'd have it there forever to remember. So I've always done that. But I didn't grow up reading a lot of comics or anything. My family didn't really have comics around. I would go next door and my neighbors would have like Calvin and Hobbes and stuff like that. But that was about it. Susan Moore was one of my painting professors, and her husband is Charles Burns. So Charles Burns was somebody who was always kind of like seriously walking around the halls of the school. And Scowling. I found out about his work. Yeah. I found out about, when I saw his work, I got really excited. And where else did I see stuff? Just going to like shows and stuff like music shows and seeing and people handing out zines and things like that. I never really was a huge comics head, but I started to get into it probably in like my early 20s, something like that.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I feel like it's some of the most exciting, innovative stuff that's opening up new territory in comics. Like your work is from people who didn't come with preconceptions about what comics should look like or what they should do.
Yeah, I was never really looking at panels. I was looking at paintings, like David Hockney and I don't know, Alice Neal, people like that, and so that was the direction I was moving. I just happened to really like autobiographical writing and storytelling, and so I'm coming from that direction, not coming from like the comics world lens, really.
And I think the first work of yours that I encountered was DUI, which came out around 2016, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was an incredibly, in some ways a little more traditional comics than some of your work, because you had a particular story you wanted to tell.
Yeah.
And it was really about a kind of transformative moment in your life, and about something that you kind of needed to record and share a record of. It's probably your most traditional auto-bio comic in a sense.
Yeah.
Much as we can say that there's a tradition. There is, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, that one was definitely, I mean, I was so stressed out at that time. Like, it was really, really helpful for me to go through each moment of that experience and process it in that way. It's not really something that I can put into words, but yeah, that's like the most literal. That's definitely like the most literal start to finish comic that I've made. Everything there it's exactly what happened. I mean, made it a little bit sillier, and it's also pencil. It's a pencil
Right.
comic, which is different from my other stuff. And I love working in pencil, but I think, like, you know, the full color work that I do, of course, it's people notice it more and are kind of expecting that from me at this point. But there's something really raw that I love about just a pencil on paper. So
Yeah,
that was a fun one to make.
And you know, I think part of those moments is like, you know, this is a life transforming moment. I need, at the very least, to remember it. Part of it is, of course, memory is not always at its best at the end of a kind of traumatic event like that.
Right.
But then there's that second instinct of yours, which is what I love so much, which is, I'm also going to share it. Like, I'm going to kind of get this out there because I want, well, why? I mean, why the share?
I think it's just, I carry around so much shame that it's in some ways a coping mechanism for me is just to say, like, this is all my shit. Here are all the bad things about me that you could ever, here's all the dirt, all the secrets, and you can choose whether you want to walk away from that or if you accept me for all of these things. So it kind of like takes away some of the anxiety or feeling like I have to pretend that I'm someone else, which I'm incapable of, you know? So it's like a confessional or something.
Yeah. It's oversharing. There was a panel last night on professional oversharing. And,
yeah.
you know, and I
should have watched that. That's like,
yeah,
exactly
you can,
what
I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, I don't think that one is, sorry. That one was adults only, so not recorded for that reason, or not streaming. I'll check with Jersey, but you know, I do think that I totally understand that. I'm an oversharer myself, and it is paradoxically an anxiety mechanism. Other people I know with anxiety often say, like, why do you share so much? Because for them, that makes it, that the idea of sharing actually seems more terrifying. But there is something protective about sharing too.
I just think you pop the balloon and it just kind of, it's all out. And at the same time, I really benefited from seeing other people's work and other people open up about their struggles with sobriety and mental illness. And I think, like, seeing other people at like the lowest of the low. And then, I think on Instagram and on the internet in general, most people are putting out the best version of themselves. Right. So I think it's like, it's really helpful to see what happens behind the scenes and to see that not everything is this curated, perfect image. So, like, there were some people that I had met online who had gotten sober, and they're sharing their journey and sharing the really shitty parts of that journey was really inspiring to me and made me feel like I could do it too. Like, oh, you also, you know, got a DUI. You also did this. We're in this position that can be so shameful, and now you're here. Okay, like, maybe I can do it too. And it's genuinely helped me a lot.
Yeah, no, and as I said, you know, your work has helped me a lot because it's, I think, you know, even, and I think it's harder on your generation than on mine, but even for me, it's, social media has made me more conscious of all the ways in which I don't measure up to people's best selves out there. And I just had, just accidentally these images up here. I just love it because it's like showing the kind of, the kind of contortions of the everyday that, that we don't normally put on Instagram or social media, those places in between where we're trying on new outfits or going through, a kind of crying fit on the floor or rapid changes in mood. Social media freezes us in these one moments that we can carefully edit and put filters on. but
Yeah.
your work is really about all the other stuff around it that
Yeah.
gets lost.
And I think like these are kind of also, they seem old to me. It seems like older work,
Right.
but it's kind of just the beginning of me feeling out like what my audience is receptive to. And so I started with just these like little funny, intimate, awkward moments. And there's some crying there. And the more feedback that I got about how other people related to it, I just keep getting pushed further and further and further down the tunnel. And I realized like the darker that I go, or the sadder, the darker that the feelings get, it's almost like the more people respond and are thankful that they're getting a little bit of like acknowledgement, and it's less lonely for them. So my work continues to transform based on the feedback that I get from people who are following my stuff online.
Yeah, I actually want a tattoo of one of the panels from the one on the right here. This often feels like the kind of rhythms of the
Yeah.
day. And
Trying to cure this feeling, and then you end up feeling like this is a whole different kind of worse.
Yeah, this wasn't what I was going for. Can I back up?
It's different.
So I wanted to also, and I'm going to be really careful about time because I want people to also have a chance to ask any questions. And folks, feel free to kind of start sending forward any questions you might have. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A as we go along as well. This book, Nocturne, felt to me like something really special and different. I mean, I was already a huge fan. And this book, with its like Emile Nold colors and just its incredible, like it was the most painterly of all of your work thus far. You had been kind of up to that point, like you've been doing some stuff with slightly more spare compositions, and here it's just so lush and so dense. Can you just talk a little bit about about your approach to this work?
Yeah, I think that at this point I had just started to develop a little bit more confidence in what I was doing. Like I said, I was taking in the feedback that I was getting. It seemed like I had like a pretty steady fan base, and that made me feel like it was okay to sort of stretch my limits and step away from like the very obvious comics that I was making that were more like literal, and to focus more on what I love to do, which is painting. So that's another part of the therapeutic process of what I do. Like I'm making these images, it's a confession space for me. And at the same time, painting in itself is so helpful for my anxiety. And that's kind of just what I wanted to focus on with this. I wanted to have like a story. It's based in reality. But I just wanted to mess around with some paint and create something really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And it really is. I mean, it's definitely a kind of, long, complicated journey into a kind of night world of fantasy, and it has its dark moments, but it's also fairly joyous work. Maybe one of the most joyful things I've seen in your work.
Yeah.
Am I misreading it? It certainly ends in a kind of, it ends in an embrace and some fun. But it felt, even as obviously there's a lot of pain that's expressed in the course of this, this night vision. There also seems a lot of hope in possibilities and possible connections coming from unlikely places.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a recurring theme in my work. And I think it can get on the nerves of some people who really like to just, feel like, let me have my negativity and just hold on to that. That's what makes me feel good. I think that's like, everybody has their own thing. And I can kind of be the type of person who's like, well, look on the bright side, and I get it. I get why that like pisses people off sometimes. But I also that's just the way that I try to live my life, and it makes me feel more optimistic about the future. Also, there's like a little bit of like, I'm getting anxious. I get worried that I'm going to come off as someone who's just saying, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. I struggle with all these things. And I don't want to have like a pity party. It's more about just saying like, this is life for everybody. It's weird and hard and complicated and confusing. And if we can laugh about it, I don't know. That's just the best way for me to move forward.
Yeah, I guess that's, even when your work, your stories don't have necessarily a kind of happy ending where you discover that the accidental gift of the cat of nine tails is just what was needed for a special new connection. The painting, the colors, there's, even when the subject is dark, the joy of the paint comes through. And as you said, for you, the painting is, and I know you've said this in other interviews as well, the process of painting is often one of the few times you feel completely liberated from anxiety and depression. Can you just say a little bit about what is it about that process? And is it, how much of it is, do you get the same sense of release from, let's say, working with colored pencils or other media?
Colored pencils are a little frustrating for me just because I haven't really gotten them down yet. But yeah, there's something about painting. I just feel like I sort of melt into it. I just go into a flow state, I guess, because I've been doing it for so long at this point. Not so long, but there's no real thinking behind it. I'm just looking at the paint. It's all super intuitive. Whenever anybody tries to ask me for advice or a lesson on painting, I'm at a loss for words because it just sort of feels like it's automatic. And it's something that's funny about that is that my brain will kind of I'll forget that. If I stop painting for a while, I forget how much freedom that I feel when I'm behind the drawing table or behind the canvas. And I'll stop painting it for a long time. But as soon as I get back into it, it's just like a release and
that helps me totally understand that way you can paint about and talk about really painful things, and yet there's also the joy and the release of the process of telling through paint that kind of serves as a kind of strange echo where so darkness and just light are kind of both present, which is not easy and not something that one finds. I read a lot of stuff about mental illness, and that combination of experiences that I feel as a reader is not something that too many cartoonists that I've explored have been able to achieve, at least for me. I really admire it. This is going to be your next book, right? Is that right?
Hope so. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but 2D Cloud is working on it, and it's going to be sort of funny when it does, because this was a really weird time in my life. It was my very, very early sobriety. I was living in Chicago, trying not to drink, and one of the things I used to distract was just making these marker drawings every single day. So
and playing Zelda.
And playing Zelda, that also was really, really helpful.
It does. Video games really help. That's how I quit smoking, and it gets you through a lot of I think addictive behaviors. It's a different addiction, but it's Zelda's a beautiful way to cure anything if you can. And I'm looking forward to it. Do you have any other kind of projects coming up? I know you've been doing a lot on Instagram. Are any of those leading towards a book project?
Yeah. So I had done. I had Cabin in the Woods was a shorter comic. It was part one of a comic that I had put out with Colorama in Berlin. So I'm slowly chugging away at the second part of that book. And then I have another one that I haven't actually talked to any publishers about releasing yet, but it's really long. And it's going to be kind of like Nocturne a little bit, that style, but with some text. And I think it's going to be called Homesick. So they're going to be books that are different from how to be alive, and that they're more narrative. And then I also just have a stack of comics similar to the one that you're showing now that I haven't put into print, and I'm hoping to compile them and get something out there, a coffee table book or something with just my one panel images. really soon. So
because I think those are amazing. It would be great to have those collected. So we actually have a question on a Q&A from Kaylee Turvo, who they ask, do you have any fans or strangers reaching out to you about really personal subjects, given how
definitely
much you share? How do you handle that?
At this point, I'm feeling, in the beginning, I tried to respond to everybody that I could. And at this point, I'm like taking a step back just because it's become like difficult for me to read all the messages and comments, not just because of time, but because it can be draining, or, I get sensitive about that kind of stuff. But when people reach out to me about sobriety specifically, I try to write back and give some advice, just because it was really helpful for me when I was in that position. And also, I'm fine with just sort of being like a vessel for people to send their thoughts and things that they might be embarrassed to share. If they can shoot it out into the world and that gives them some relief, I hope that's what happens. But I'm always open to getting the messages, and I respond as much as I can. Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine sometimes, it's because of the nature of the medium. People are also going to project their own stuff onto it, and it may not be what you had in mind, but you also don't want to probably take that away from them, because that's
right. I mean,
they're
it's
getting
heavy
something
stuff
good out of it.
To get, have conversations about, depression, suicide, alcohol, like all that. I'm not a professional, so I try to respond when I can and give helpful advice. But yeah.
Yeah, and I probably, as you and I have talked about, in given this period, somebody like you who's been dealing with the diagnosis of anxiety and sobriety, and with anxiety and depression, and with sobriety, and has developed tools and strategies and found ways of sharing it. You may find your services as a therapist called on, and you'll have to say, no, artist, not therapist, please.
Like, I need a therapist.
Yes. Because I do think, it's, again, there's as I was kind of jokingly said at the beginning, there is a way in which people like you who have this sense of their ability to articulate these experiences and these struggles for people who are brand new to all this, particularly post-pandemic, it's really valuable. It really is going to be helpful. So again, I want to show, before we're done, some of your quarantine era work on Instagram as well, because I found that really useful. There's a question from Amanda Smith, says, are you fighting off gallery representation?
No, I'm not. I mean, I've just been honestly, this is just for anybody out there who's interested in or knows anything about, where I could get a manager or something like that. Like, I just do all this myself. And this huge show was amazing. It kind of came out of nowhere and shocked me. But besides that, no, I haven't been, there aren't galleries reaching out to me, or too many publishers reaching out to me to put stuff out. It's kind of just been me floundering and trying to move forward.
And it is a bit of, I think we're going to go through a bit of a slowing down period for publishers right now. It's kind of, everybody tries to kind of stay afloat during this period, which is going to be a challenge, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of festivals and kind of shut down. And, those that didn't, like CXC, we've had to go online, which is awesome, but it also makes it sometimes harder to get work out there and publishers and so on. So there is a sense that this is a period of kind of trying to, as you said, everybody's going to have to be their own one-person show for a bit. And so again, you already have those tools, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. It's like another reason for me to just keep building a really strong body of work and just cross my fingers and hope that there's going to be an outlet for that in the future.
Well, I know there's a big demand for your paintings because your store is all out of them. He says, wanting new paintings up there.
I'll put some more up. But that's the other thing, when you're thinking about gallery representation, I like to try to keep my paintings relatively accessible. Like, I don't know how, it's not often that, people can spend $500 on an original piece of art. Right. But then when you start talking about gallery prices, I mean, they're going through the roof. So that's something I kind of struggle with. Like I want my work to be accessible, but I also like the idea of making money and having my work in a gallery. So.
And there are, I mean, I do know, that there are folks, and particularly folks like you, who have a solid foot in the world of fine arts, who have found ways of doing both and keeping them separate. But I imagine it can't be easy. Yeah, it's if anybody out there has any advice, please send it on. We don't just take questions here; we take advice also. Yeah, this is. I love these images so much. So, and this is a page from How to Be Alive. That is one of my maybe my single, I don't know.
Wow.
I love this one so much. It feels, I mean, I feel Matisse here. I just feel so much of the kind of, I can feel all the time spreading out across that page, even though it's a single panel. And it's really, and the colors, of course, are gorgeous. Which brings me, actually, I wanted to see if I could jump ahead for a second and I'll come back, just to some of your recent things you've been doing, and I can scroll back afterwards on Instagram. What are you working in here? Is this
just
gouache?
me. What's that? Oh, it's gouache.
Marker?
Yeah,
gouache, yeah.
Yep.
But you're working with a kind of different style here in some of these pieces, a little, almost allowing it to be painterly, but a little more sketchy as well.
Yeah.
A little more spontaneous.
Yeah, it wasn't really a conscious thing, but I just knew that I wanted to start using some writing, and yeah, this was more of like, it was a diary comic, something I just felt I had to get out onto the page.
And I do love your description of the kind of anxieties that masks produce for some of us with social anxiety, and the way in which reading faces is so crucial, and for a feeling of safety. I think you do. I mean, it made me laugh, but I also was like, yeah, that's like, I get that. And of course, especially for those, and I live, because of the privileges of race and gender, I live with less immediate sense of real danger. Most of the dangers in here. So I can only imagine how much more so this is for those who find themselves on the opposite sides of very meaningful threats of violence on a daily basis. These masks, I mean, there was a way for me, in some ways, masks were liberating, because I'm like, I have a little bit of face blindness. So I'm like, nobody can see anything.
I don't have
anymore.
to recognize anybody anymore. Yeah.
But I have found these really kind of helpful. I imagine a lot of people have been kind of really plugged into these. I know you have, your followers are, what are you at on Instagram? It's a lot.
115,000 or something like that.
That's I mean, and again, I just feel like you're kind of capturing of what the days feel like during this strange time. Some of which is familiar to your life before quarantine, but much of which is new for a lot of people, I think has been really helpful. And then I wanted to also ask about your clothes. I mean, it makes sense. You draw such beautiful clothes. Of course, you would be also maybe designing some cool clothes.
Yeah, that's something I want. I mean, I'm just sort of opening the door to that territory. I mean, as the fan base grows, part of me wants to open up more and more, but then another part of me is sort of like wanting to take a step back in terms of talking about myself constantly. So like the clothing feels like an outlet where I can just sort of paint, and I know that there'll be some income coming from it, but it's not like I have to share all my deepest secrets in order for it to work. So, and it's just something that's really fun for me. And, it's the painting part. It's all about painting. No, there's no narrative there. So,
right. And you've done some kind of fabrics and tapestry designs I've seen in some of your paintings as well.
Yeah.
And I love, and there's actually a blanket version for those who are interested of this amazing burning police cars pattern, which I desperately want that blanket to keep in my office on campus. And
and it's going to be, the proceeds are donated to some local organizations, people that I'm working with in Baltimore. And I'm going to keep working to make money for those sorts of things. Yeah.
So we have a question over from on the chat from Jessica Anderson from Chicago. And she says, Tara, I love your work. Thank you for creating and putting your work out there. How large are your original paintings, and what type of paint do you use? And do you always use canvas?
I don't. So I said canvas earlier, but it's just, I use Bristol paper. You can just get it at any old art store. So you can get it at Rite Aid sometimes. But most of my paintings are 9 by 12. Some are 11 by 14 inches. And I use gouache. I use acrylic gouache. So it's like an acrylic based gouache paint. And then I'll go in with like these neon gel pens sometimes. There's often marker in there too, all different kinds of marker. But it's mostly gouache. Mm-hmm.
That's great. And Jessica says a favorite of yours is the bangs trim. I wish I had that up on the slides. I know exactly that one. It's up in my bathroom and makes me smile each time.
Aww. A lot of people tell me that my work is in their bathrooms. I think it's really funny. Bathroom artist.
But it makes sense, right? There's a kind of physical intimacy and a kind of openness with the body and the kind of things we go through when we confront ourselves in the bathroom, both positive and negative. I think that's the highest compliment.
You're right.
Because it's our most vulnerable place, right? In many respects. Here's one on the right here. It says, quarantine fact, hot, healthy, successful people bake sourdough bread. I think that's
saw a lot of that happening.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, I really grew to hate sourdough bread during the quarantine. And also just love the map of just how we kind of have that sense. It says, the caption says, it's almost as if the amount of space that my thoughts have to breathe shrinks, which is, even without the antecedent, we kind of can all kind of relate to that experience of how anxiety or depression or other mental or emotional challenges can literally kind of start to feel like something physical kind of squeezing down on us.
Yeah. And I think that's like sort of my response to getting, like, if I'm not able to respond to everybody's messages in the DMs about issues that they're having, I've found that I kind of wanted to share some of the ways that I've solved problems for myself, for other people.
Yeah, no, and one of the things I mentioned briefly when we were chatting before, the world kind of around the graphic medicine movement, which is kind of it began as a working group of some medical caregivers and cartoonists and patients who were really interested in trying to deal with the problem of how do you talk about particularly things that often doctors struggle to be sufficiently compassionate about or interested in, like mental illness or chronic pain, and how can comics help us deal with the kind of challenge of articulating and sharing with another, starting with the caregiver, right? Because that act of communication is so crucial. As we all know if we've had a bad therapist, for example. And how, is there something that combination, in your experience, that combination of word and image allows that just sitting there in a clinical setting and trying to use your words doesn't do?
Yeah, I think it's just visually, it's a lot easier for me to express some of the feelings that I'm having. I'm trying to think of how else I would put it. It's like, the things that are intangible, like the feeling of anxiety, the feeling of being trapped. It's more than you can really describe in words, and painting my like interior landscape has been really helpful.
And a lot of your work, a lot of your earlier work hasn't relied a lot on text. It's been very much kind of in that tradition of the kind of wordless graphic novel that goes back to, people like Lynn Ward and so on. But I feel like maybe a little bit more kind of text and image combination stuff in some of your more recent stuff.
Yeah, I can definitely. It's easier for me to be a little bit more specific. I like that in the beginning I wasn't using words as much because more people were able to see it and connect with it. It didn't matter, you know, where you're from, what language you speak. But now, again, it's something that has come with like confidence. You know, when you putting out your actual diary writing is really scary. You know, to have anybody read through your diary is terrifying. But as I'm gaining more confidence in my writing ability and in that, like, trusting that my thoughts aren't too, you know, cringy or whatever, I'm starting to write more, and the feedback has been really good.
That's great, actually, and that actually connects with a really a question we just got from Josie Colt. Says, "Hi Tara, I'm such a fan. Thank you. I'm wondering about your writing process. When you're making a comic or a multiple paneled work, do you iron out the writing for each panel first, or does that come after the image, or a combination?"
It's a combination. I think there's usually an image, and then or yeah, it's a combination. I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll probably write, you know, 4 sentences, and then, you know, I'll go into the painting track or the drawing track, and then whatever I end up drawing will sort of inform where the writing ends up going, and they sort of build off of each other. Or like it feels a lot like hand building. Like I'm adding and removing until I end up with this form that feels like a perfect combination of the two.
And when you're working with painting, of course, there's not a lot of opportunities for edits afterwards. That's
yeah.
part of the painting process, is that the image does become, I mean, obviously you can there's an additive relationship, but there are certain things that kind of, as you described it, kind of take their own shape in the flow, in that kind of spontaneous experience that then are also gonna kind of necessarily probably have to take a lead role in driving the text going forward as you start incorporating more text. Oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, so much of what I end up seeing after the fact is a surprise to me, like the way that the words and the drawings work together. I throw it together really quickly, and I found that there's a lot of beauty in the parts that I don't even notice when I'm first making the drawings. So yeah, they kind of change over time for me.
Is there, when you were doing Nocturne, for example, did you have a sense of the punchline at the end, or did that come
No, later? Yeah, that's a perfect example. That book just sort of kept building and building and building, and I thought, I have no idea where this is going to go. And I always have so much doubt about whether or not I'm going to be able to complete a project or it's going to feel finished. And I'm learning that even though, you know, it's hard to listen to that part of myself, I need to trust that it'll come to me. I guess like the muse comes to you and you find your way magically, kind of.
Yeah, and you did, right? And it didn't, I mean, on one level you could say, well, it didn't necessarily, I think the work holds up even without that deeply satisfying ending, but I also feel like it's felt absolutely true and authentic and deeply satisfying, especially because so many of those long nights often don't end up, you know, so happily.
Yeah.
So it was very, very nice. Do you have you also have a collaborative work you did? You haven't done too much collaboration, have you? Not that.
No, John Michael and I are great friends. We dated for about a year, and we have so much in common. We had met I had seen his work on Instagram and loved it, and he had seen mine, and his stuff was very like mental health related.
Right.
So we talked for about a year, and then decided to just create this project as a way for us to get to know each other and for fun. And we put it out.
And it's I mean, honestly, things to do instead of killing yourself was, again, a perfectly timed book. That came out in 2019, I believe. So,
yeah. That was John Michael's title. It's hilarious. I mean, it's a silly book with just a bunch of fun drawings, but it was really cathartic for us to make. And sometimes
it's a lot of fun. And you know, these are, I mean, if you think about it, you have things to do instead of killing yourself, how to be alive.
Stay alive.
there is a, I mean, you play to some degree with the conventions of the self-help book, right? But in a, you know, you're kind of ironizing those conventions, which always the writer of a self-help book is always like, here's my method, here's the solutions.
Right.
You are obviously not offering a method or a kind
Yeah.
of pat solution.
Well, I love
but
self-help
there
books.
is help. Yeah.
Yeah. I love self-help books, and a lot of what I do is just reacting to the parts of self-help books that like make me, do an eye roll. I just, it's like there is valuable information here, but let's make it a little bit less corny, a little bit more realistic, or
and stop pretending that there's a one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah.
I was recently kind of reading a book like a method for sobriety, and I was like, 30% of this connects and resonates. 70% of this is clearly your experience. Like, why do we need to pretend this is everybody's? I think we have time for one more question at least. I'm gonna keep a careful eye on time because everything gets so tight in such an exciting festival weekend. Naomi Weintraub asks, I missed the start of the talk, but I have a question. How does Tara build her compositions? I feel like she's really good at using the white negative space in her compositions and creating very full compositions with a lot going on.
That's such a hard one to answer because it just feels really intuitive and like, practiced. I don't know. It's not something that I can put into words. It's just sort of, it develops without my thinking about it too much. It just, I feel like something ought to go here for some reason, and there's not really a reason behind it. So I'm sorry that's not the best response, but I mean, something that you could do is just looking at a lot of other people's artwork is helpful. I've learned a lot from just looking at what other people do.
It's interesting in a book like How to Be Alive, you do move back and forth between what Naomi describes as the way in which you use negative white space, and then something really dense and layered like this page. And
there's not really a middle ground. It's either it's all there,
all or
really
nothing.
dense,
or then you get these frameless,
dark,
remarkable kind of descriptions of just the body in motions, like, as you described it really beautifully. I kind of loved the connection with Muybridge, but Muybridge wasn't interested in interiority, right? He's just, here's a body in motion, whether it's a human body or an animal body. I want to capture kind of scientifically how motion really works. The human eye isn't that good. You want to capture the kind of subjective body in emotional motion, and it's and there the kind of negative white space seems to work absolutely beautifully.
Thank you.
And again, fashion designer, I would wear that outfit. When you're ready to start your fashion line, I want that top.
If anybody wants to team up, let me know. Right now I'm just sort of working with like whatever websites are available, but I would like to make more sustainably produced clothing and move into that territory.
Yeah, because clothing is so fraught when it comes to thinking about labor and materials. But it's gorgeous stuff.
Thank you.
It makes me want to dress much more colorfully than I do.
I know, that's the thing. I really don't. Whenever I go to comics events, people are like, "Hey, you're wearing a crazy outfit," but no.
No, it's just terrific. I think we should probably start winding up. If there are any last questions, this is kind of last call. And I really do want to remind everybody who's in Columbus or is going to be passing through Columbus, which should be everybody, because we also have so much great comic stuff going on around here year round, including, of course, Tara's exhibition up at the Columbus Museum of Art. And at least through the end of the year, the Remarkable Ladies First exhibition, curated by Caitlin McGurk and Rachel Miller at the Billy Ireland. So everybody should come to Columbus, see this exhibit, and if you actually, Tara, can you? I don't have your Instagram link up here. Can you just remind me what your Instagram link is, and I'll put it on the chat?
It's just my name. It's just at Tara Booth.
Oh, that's easy.
That's it. And then my website is www.tarabooth.club, where you can find some of the clothing and prints of my work and some books if there are any
And
left.
pretty soon, some new paintings.
Yes, some original paintings.
Do you like how I keep mentioning that?
Yes.
Well,
I gotta do
thank you
it.
so much. Thank you so much for
Jared.
bringing your work to us and for talking with us all this morning. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Bye, all. Thank you.
Bye.